We are recording on Friday, October 20th, 2023 at 3:16 p.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Professor President Robert Spencer. We're talking about yes, everything above Prime Minister, the UN General Assembly, everything. He's got it all. Don't worry about it. He was in Delta Force. Don't even worry about it. Talking about Jihad Watch, Jihad watching, and it's been about 2 weeks. It's been a week since the supposed, day of rage or terror or whatever they're fucking screaming about, and a little longer since the attacks. And really, just more importantly for future listeners, it is October 2023, and it's kind of, roughly 2 weeks after Hamas decided to go more primitive than normal on the state of Israel. And we are now seeing, I believe, two U.S. carrier strike groups, strike fleets in the Mediterranean, and Israel bombing Gaza. And that's about the extent of what I know. And as I told you, I had Claire on last week, and then I had a former, CIA ground branch black ops guy, and he was saying like, yeah, he's like, don't doubt, don't be surprised if you see a tactical nuke or something. And he was going in to say, Bibi Netanyahu's brother, who's obviously died in special forces, and they're the Sayeret Makat, which is, I guess, they're modeled after British SAS, whose motto is "Who dares wins." And he said it's kind of ironic because we're seeing, that's kind of what Hamas did. They dared, right? And it's, what they'd say in World War II. Eisenhower would always say it. He'd be like, the Nazis are like inhuman, but he's like, if you don't respect your enemy, you're bound to lose to them. So, Dr. Spencer, could you maybe tell people what is the important takeaway point right now? And aside from, what people are tweeting, and I stand with Hamas or whatever the hell they're saying.
One thing is people are worried about the U.S. getting involved, and they're right to be worried because the Biden regime wants to feed the military-industrial complex, and that's why he's itching to get us involved in a world war, wants to get us in war with Ukraine, that is in Ukraine with Russia. We're already in a proxy war there, and he would love to get us involved in this one as well. But we really hope that doesn't happen. It would be a very easy way to escalate and get into a world war, because then if we got in, Iran would get in, Russia would get in, China would probably get in, and then here we are. The thing about it is that, ironically, Israel doesn't need us to get in at all. Israel can take care of this problem itself if actually we take off the handcuffs. What has happened in previous conflicts of this kind is that the United States has always stopped Israel when it was about to eradicate the jihad terrorists completely, and prevented them from doing so that the problem of jihad terrorism was just kicked down the road. And Hamas lived, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad lived to fight another day. That's likely what will happen again here. But if we would just leave them alone and let them do what has to be done, they could end this threat for generations to come. The jihad imperative will remain. As long as there are believers in Muhammad and Allah and the Quran, there will be jihad. But if you take out a major jihad group and render it a matter of history, it's not going to be rebuilt overnight. And so there would be a respite, and it would change the whole face of the region.
Yeah, it's never going to stop, and I don't think anyone seriously is trying to put that. I think anyone proposing that it's kind of a straw man. Like, you think you're going to stop this forever? No, you're not going to stop it forever, right? But it's cancer. It's an amputation. It's like, we can keep going back for chemo every 3 months, or you can remove the leg, and it's not always, you're not going to live forever, but it's, I think it was General Eisen, or no, it was Curtis LeMay from Strategic Air Command, who headed up the cigar chomping, based, Dr. Strange Lovian, General Ripper. But he said, if you're going to use violence, use overwhelming violence, use excessive violence, kill civilians, because ultimately you will not only save more of your men, you will save more of their men. And there's truth to that. And it's hard for you and I to imagine it. We're both sitting in comfy leather chairs before this. We're talking about retirement and jazz, and it's hard for us to understand that, right? But
Sure.
for the people that whose vocation is that, they understand that, right? You don't criticize a doctor when they say these are the options.
You have a very important point there, because war, as Sherman said, of course, very famously, war is hell.
Yeah.
There's no easy or pretty way to do this. And the fact is that now, with the media kind of saturation that we have, people do expect an easy and pretty way to do this. And so a tremendous pressure is being put on Israel. Like, for example, this morning there was a story of a church in Gaza City, St. Porphyrius Greek Orthodox Church, that the Patriarchate of Jerusalem said was hit by an Israeli strike. And yet the media, as anti-Israel as it is, the New York Times did not report it this way. Nobody else reported it this way except people like Al Jazeera, saying that Israel had hit the place. The Washington Post report said that there was a blast there. And then way down in the story, they quoted an IDF spokesman saying, we were taking out a Hamas outpost in that area, and it may have hit the church in the process. In other words, it was accidental, not a strike on the church itself. But the point is that if that's all accurate, which of course it may not be, and Israel hit this or part of the church compound by accident, this is just what happens in war, particularly when you have an enemy like Hamas that intentionally stages operations from civilian areas precisely in order to draw retaliatory fire it can use for propaganda purposes. And so people are all expecting, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem sends out this notice blaming Israel. They're all expecting this to be able to be done surgically and cosmetically and with no collateral damage. Unfortunately, that's just not how modern day warfare. I'm not even sure it's even possible for it to work that way. And, we have plenty of precedents for this. Going back to World War II, people still argue about the morality of dropping the nuclear bombs. And the defenders of dropping the nuclear bombs in Japan, the opponents have a very easy case. They can say, look, you killed all these civilians. You leveled 2 cities. No good. You should only kill combatants. Great. Sounds good. It's plausible. But then the other side says, well, what's the alternative? If we had not hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it is likely the Japanese would not have surrendered. And if the Japanese had not have surrendered, a ground invasion would have been necessary. And if there had been a ground invasion by American troops of Japan, there would have been as many as 1 million Japanese casualties, which is more than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it goes back to what you were quoting from LeMay, that if you do that, if you are brutal in the short run, it can save lives on both sides in the long run. But people don't have that kind of calculus, or don't even want to grant it in these furiously emotional and adversarial situations. They don't want to even allow for that. But, you have, even nowadays, people sometimes say the bombing of Dresden, which also wasn't nuclear, but it was the leveling of a city, and the killing of numerous non-combatants, and the destruction of the whole infrastructure of the whole place. And they say that this was immoral. So what are you going to do? You have, obviously, Germany. Germany didn't surrender. I mean, they did ultimately a week after the whole place is rubble.
Yeah.
The idea that they would have kept on fighting seems to be about 100% certain. As long as there were any German troops they could have brought into the fray, they were going to keep going. So what do you do to stop them? And where do you draw the line? These things are not so easy. It's easy from the armchairs to talk about this, but it's not so easy in the event.
Lest we not forget the last order Hitler gave, the Nero decree. Turned on his own people. He said, we are losing because you are weak. The Aryan race, you are weak. He said, he essentially was saying, tear up the copper wire, take what you can. Blow up the bridges, burn your cars, everything. Who do they put outside the Fuhrer bunker? Eighth graders who were destroyed by Soviet artillery. Who do they put in the experimental U-boats? I forget what they're called. They're these mini subs, and they gave them a drug called D12, which was a mixture of cocaine, crystal meth, and I think Vicodin. And they put children in them because they ran out of sailors.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, but it was after that, right? They're getting ready to surrender after that. No, they surrendered. They surrendered when Hitler evacuated his brains next to Eva Braun. That's when they surrendered.
You say don't hit Dresden, and I understand that. I'm sorry any civilians were killed in Dresden, but
sure.
How are you going to get these people to stop? They're crazy. They're putting eighth graders in uniform against the Soviet army, and you expect them to be reasonable? And so what are you going to do? You have to make hard choices.
Not only that, when Truman learned about and one thing about FDR is, FDR gets shit on a lot. Social whatever. I don't know enough about him to speak on it.
Yeah, I'm no.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about FDR, and I always give credit where credit's due, is when Einstein came over and Leo Szilard, his like protege, came over and basically pitched the uranium bomb to him, told him that the Germans could do it. In 1940, FDR said, "Do it, build it." And as it went on, it's now all declassified. But he was saying, "I'm so sick of this war. I'm so sick of American boys dying for this. Nuke them." So for all the shit he gets, he was saying years before, he's like, just nuke them. And then when Truman didn't find out about it until 13 days into his presidency. That's how classified it was. And when General Groves told him about it and whether or not we would use it, he said, you have two options, Mr. President. He said, you can use it, number one, or number two, you can start drafting your address now for when you're impeached in a couple years and the American people find out you could have used it, and or after the ground invasion and we lose all these men, we're still going to end up using it. So let's go lose 1 million Japanese and 1 million Americans and then use the nuke, or use the nuke prior. So it's
be moralistic when you're not in the fray. It reminds me of this movie. I haven't seen this movie, Oppenheimer. I don't intend to see it. I know it's made a big stir a few months ago. But I don't think this is in it. The famous story of Oppenheimer going to see
Truman's office after the war.
And yeah, he's I am death, destroyer of worlds.
I have blood on my hands.
Get this guy out of here. He doesn't understand. He's playing these moralistic games and indulging in this narcissistic behavior. He does not understand the hard choices that have to be made in these situations.
Yeah, he said something along the lines of like paraphrase, essentially like I don't ever want to see that pussy in my office again. I have blood on my hands. Right? That's basically what he said. And you can't even go to Truman and then go, see, he's a ruthless, bloodthirsty animal. Because after the war, and when he removed MacArthur because he wanted to nuke Korea, and his quotes about it is saying like, you cannot look at, and this is from Truman, who served in World War I. All this stuff's like declassified now, but him telling generals, he's like, you have to understand that these aren't normal bombs. These aren't cannons. These aren't guns. These aren't warships. He's like, these are weapons that incinerate women and children. Like the thing about it, he removed General MacArthur, like a beloved World War II general, because he wanted to use nukes. So you can't even say that he's trigger happy.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we draw the line? Where do we say? I was watching a video last night. It was like a 4K AI upscaled video of like the second plane hitting the World Trade Center. And the top comment was, it's been 22 years and it's still, sometimes you just pause and remember that this happened. Mm-hmm. They hijacked commercial airliners, not little planes, commercial airliners, and they crashed them into the two tallest towers and arguably the urban capital of the planet. Like, this happened. And we can look back now and talk about the war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Can you imagine September, say it's roughly been 2 weeks. Can you imagine going back September 25th and being like, America's really got to go in there with some kid gloves on. No, everyone was driving around just waving flags, honking horns, like let's go bomb them. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know, but you can't say that to someone. You can't look them in the face when there's still a burning inferno of wreckage at ground zero, and they have NASA satellites looking at it, and it's like hotter than an oven, and be like, hey guys, when you go into Afghanistan, I'm not trying to be that guy, but let's try to be professional about this. No.
Joe Biden did that just the other day.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
He was over in Israel, and he said you have to avoid the rage that swept over America after 9/11. And so he
um,
was actually doing exactly what you just said he can't do,
yeah,
because of course he's an egregious criminal.
yeah.
And so he has no problem trying to shift the focus of victimhood onto the perpetrators
Hmm,
and try to restrain those who would stop them.
hmm. So, with all this being said, then, what do you think we are realistically going to see in the coming weeks from
Realistically,
Israel? Just, yeah, I mean,
Israel's going to go in to Gaza, and then the media will be inundating us with reports about civilians being killed and little pictures of little babies in the rubble, and dolls in on piles of rubble and things like that.
yeah,
And then the Biden regime, Antony Blinken and Joe Biden, will tell Netanyahu that he's got to stop. And then Netanyahu will stop because he's isolated on the world stage and only has one friend, and he can't afford to alienate his one friend. And so he's not really a friend, but he's all they've got. And so that's what I think is most likely. That's how it's played out every time. In 1973, the Israelis were just getting a decisive edge over Egypt and the other countries that had invaded the Yom Kippur War, and Nixon made them stop. Nixon and Kissinger. Um, then there have been numerous smaller conflicts since then, where Israel goes in somewhere to Palestinian areas to try to stop this once and for all, and pretty quickly they get stopped by the international media, not by the American regime, that is, in conjunction with the international media stirring up public opinion against Israel. This is already happening, of course. Nobody's even in Gaza. There've been bombings, and the bombings have not been superficial, as indicated by the bombing of the church and so on. But we already saw the bombing of the hospital. Al Ahli Hospital was in all around the world. The story went immediately. Israel's
mhm,
bombed a hospital, and look how terrible they are. 500 people are dead. And now we know that Israel didn't bomb the hospital. Palestinian Islamic Jihad was firing rockets at Israel, and one of them hit the hospital because they are lousy at what they do, and they think Allah is going to guide their rockets, and so they don't really care about aiming them properly, and so they hit the hospital. They actually did not hit the hospital. They hit the hospital parking lot, incinerated a bunch of cars, and I believe about 10 people were killed, not 500. But the story has already gone out all over the place. I think it was Mark Twain who said that the lie goes all halfway around the world before the truth is finished putting on its shoes. And
yeah,
that's what we have here. And we have it again and again and again and again and again. Liberation. It's a magazine in Paris, a popular French magazine. And they ran a picture. They're already in full uh, anti-Israel establishment media mode. It's what they always do. They ran a cover photo of an anti-Israel protest, and this guy is holding up a picture, and he's enraged, and he's holding up the picture, and the picture you see is this little crying baby on a pile of rubble in Gaza. Except there are a couple of catches. The picture is not a real image; it's an AI image, and the girl has like 6 fingers, stuff like that, that shows that it's an AI image. And it's not even new. It was used to illustrate the earthquake in Turkey. What was that, 6, 7 months ago? So Liberation is just in full anti-Israel propaganda mode. And Liberation is just one French paper. All the establishment media all over Europe and all over the US is going to be doing this soon. And then Biden will tell them to cut it out, and then they'll cut it out.
Do you think that what we're seeing is almost an overpressure? Like, you look at something where, again, let's use the World Trade Center, right? You can find the videos right before it collapses. You can find the points where it's a load bearing facade, which means that the outside of the building held most of the weight. It allowed for more office space, and it's stronger than anything. But if it was going to go down, you can point to the parts of that's where it's going to break, right? If you're put on the rack during the Inquisition and they start pulling you apart, you and I aren't, we look normal, but if you did apply insane pressures, you can pretty much assume where it's going to be. Joints, right? It's just physics. That's where they're going to rip off. They're smaller than like your torso. Are we just seeing, and I don't think I don't think anyone has the answer. Are we just seeing a boiling over in that Russia, Ukraine, kind of like the former Soviet bloc-ish, right? You have the Middle East, you have, Gaza, Israel, and then the thing where everyone's looking is Taiwan, China. Are these just the points where we don't want World War III, but if it started to boil over, you can kind of point to the spots where the steam's going to start busting the rivets out? Is that what we're seeing? Is it a more like meta, zoomed out picture?
Oh, yeah, sure. It could easily become a world war because Iran has been making genocidal threats against Israel for years. Iran actually did this because they fund Hamas, they own and operate Hezbollah, they fund Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So really, the jihad against Israel is a proxy war already waged by the Islamic Republic of Iran against Israel. So Iran initially said, if you go in to Gaza, we're coming in. And then they backed that off and said, well, no, the Gazans can take care of themselves. But if some other power were to get in, if I think it's inconceivable that it would happen, but there is a slight possibility that there could be American troops there, then a lot of the Islamic countries might think that they're honor bound to get involved. And then the whole thing could escalate from there.
Yeah, Delta Force over there. Didn't the White House tweet a picture yesterday? Did you hear about that?
Yeah, they outed the guys. You got to wonder, so we already knew this.
I don't think it was unintentional at all, man.
Absolutely.
Go back and read it.
On the other side, Joe went over to Israel to show solidarity and patch things up with Netanyahu, and he takes the occasion to announce 100 million to Gaza, and he says it's not going to go to Hamas. How can he keep it from going to Hamas? Hamas runs Gaza. Who could he give it to in Gaza who's strong enough to keep it out of the hands of Hamas if Hamas wants it? It's ridiculous. He's actually going over to Israel and announcing, oh, by the way, I'm going to help fund the war against you.
Read Mark Bowden's Black Hawk Down, and they're talking about the unit, which is Delta Force, right? Delta Force is, they are tier 1. I'm friends with the guy I've interviewed, Delta Force. They're a different fucking breed. But the point is even in that book, they talk about, everything's blacked out. You never see their faces. You never see anything. You see these guys who are just jacked, like, tanned, look like they could kill you with their stare. And you ask them what they do, and they say, oh, I work on telephone lines. Like, and everyone knows what they do, but you go, oh, how are telephone lines? And they go, it's pretty interesting. And then that's the end of the conversation. But like the guy I've had on before a million times, Dale Comstock, who's the youngest ever member of Delta Force, he always talks about, like, again, you find the weak point. He was like, you're not going to kill Delta Force members. He's like, they're not human. You can't kill. But what you can do is you can find a family. He's like, when people say, the U.S. government has F-15s, how are you going to fight them? Dale's like, you don't. You find the suburban home where their kids are. You don't want to do that, but if they're going to drop a bomb from 5 miles up on you, you go, hey, I know where your kids are. That's how you stop it. And it just is where you find the weak spot. And so there's a reason why their faces are blacked out. People look at it like, what's the difference? It's not that, well, there they are. They're the Delta Force. When we see their face, we know that, well, the thing, you're never going to see their face because they're Delta Force. But I would imagine you could probably find where their pregnant wife is, where their old parents live. And now all of a sudden you got the hardest motherfucker on the planet wondering about, their 88-year-old mom.
Mhm.
No part of me believes that was tweeted by accident. Now,
Mm.
I'm not, you can't know. You can't get in their head and go, what was it about? But I would imagine we were kneecapping our own people. I'm not going to go as far as to say Biden wants our guys to get killed, although I don't think he's above that. It
Oh, I don't
seems, me neither, but just for the sake of like trying not to go into rabid, the equivalent of Orange Man bad, just to try to stay rational. It does seem like a handicapping, a kneecapping of now they can't go in.
Yeah.
And then followed by 100 million to Gaza. I mean, you can't tell me that if looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. So
Yeah.
I
Conceivably, it was some idiot who got his job because he ticks off some diversity box
yeah,
who didn't know that these people's identities were secret.
perhaps,
Conceivably. But
there are reasons though. There are reasons. There are reasons. There are checks and balances. You don't just tweet pictures. You can't do that. So it does seem like that. And wasn't it like leading early on in the Ukraine war? Didn't Biden go over and talk about how the 101st was in Poland or something? And everyone was like, why the fuck
oh
did he
yeah,
just
that's
say
right.
that?
He revealed that. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean,
That could have started World War III right there.
yeah.
Because the Russians could have said, I mean, the Russians aren't doing so hot themselves. And so maybe he wasn't worried about that, but I think that he just didn't care because he wants more war. They could have said, this is a clear provocation. You have overstepped all the bounds of NATO's original mission, and you're clearly threatening us. And so you're using this conflict as a proxy war. You've got your special forces there, and we're going to retaliate.
I go back to this, and it's like one of the first, I think, 20 or 30 episodes I did. And for reference, this is episode 1362. So truly the beginning. A guy I had on, I don't even know his name. I know his name is, we just called him T. And early on to find guests, I would just go to Reddit and I would find people that were doing AMAs, ask me anythings. Because my logic is they're interesting enough to be asked questions and they're doing it on their own. So they want to talk. So I would just go prune people from there. That's how I found guests early on. Then I was permanently banned from Reddit, but whatever. I went and found this guy. And what?
Reddit's another fascist state.
Yeah, no, I got
They all are, but
yeah,
Reddit's
no, I got banned there in 2020. I was really drunk and I was just logging in and out of these two accounts and I was trying to get people to fight. I was like, we need a shot. I was like, send out the National Guard. We gotta shut down BLM now. And then I'd get another one and I'd be like, we are the 99%. Like, fuck them up. And then I think I like didn't log out of one by accident. And somebody was like, and I got reported and they found an IP address and they're like, this is inciting violence. And legally, I think they're correct. But the point is
well,
so
then
yeah, hey, whatever.
Reddit's still a fascist state.
That make it correct. That's why you're my lawyer. But when I had this guy on, I was talking to him and just reading him, and we're both dudes, and I think I finally kind of asked a question. I was like, man, you're a Jewish guy, and not only in the IDF, but you're in like tier 1. Like what is your response when you hear people in the United States talk about how, we shouldn't, do this to terrorists. I'm like, you must be, because I look at it like, take the gloves off, bomb them all. And this is like March 2020. I'm like, but what is your thought? And I remember he goes, yeah, I feel bad for them. And I was like, what? And he goes on to say, he's like, Hezbollah, Hamas, whatever. He's like, they're from these little shithole villages. They've never seen running water. They've never seen a toothbrush. They make the equivalent of like what, 5 cents a week. And all of a sudden, some wealthy financer comes along and goes, here's this RPG. There's this US, Humvee motorcade. Go shoot at it. And your family's taken care of for life. You may or may not survive. This guy looks at it like it's a win-win. If I die, I'm out of this shithole. If I survive, I survive. Either way, my family's now taken care of. He goes,
And
I feel
you die, you go and hang out in paradise with the 72
sure,
virgins.
sure. But even if he doesn't truly believe that in his bones, it's like, well, at least I don't have to be here. And he's like, I feel bad for him. Like, what else would you do? And I was like, that's true. And he goes, conversely, I do have to kill them because now it's them or me. So he's like, I will end them without thinking twice. But I get it. And that's always stuck out to me as one of I've brought that up so many times because I think it's probably the most pragmatic response I've ever heard. It's not bleeding heart, but it's also not fuck up, they're different. He's like, I get it, but I also get that it's them or us. And
This is what war is.
yes,
All those German soldiers, they were just guys who got drafted.
yeah,
Maybe some of them loved Hitler, but probably a lot of them didn't. But what choice did they have?
yeah, yeah, the Wehrmacht. Yeah, the Wehrmacht were the average guys like me getting drafted. The SS and the SA, those were the radicals. But I
So
mean,
Hitler takes over, and maybe you hate him. Maybe you were a social democrat or something, one of the parties that got banned. And he's there. He's in charge. You get drafted. What are you going to do? You go
yeah,
and fight.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You see what they're doing to the Jews. It's like, man, they're rounding up women and children and throwing them in gas chambers. Are you then going to turn around and be like, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind? No, they're showing you right now that there is nothing behind their eyes. It is a black void of hatred. You're probably looking at a draft as like best case scenario.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you don't kill them. You have to. You're a poor GI, you got fucking drafted, right? You're me. You're like, I just wanted to do a podcast and now I'm storming Omaha Beach. Doesn't mean that you don't kill them, but it also doesn't mean you have to lose your humanity. But
Yeah, you have well, it's very hard. Talking about World War II also, you can think about these guys. Probably a lot of them were not Nazis, probably a lot of them were anti-Nazi, but also you're looking at, especially as the war goes on and it's never ending, and the Soviets are getting closer, and then finally they come into Germany and they start leveling places and raping all the women in sight. And these are your sisters, your aunts, your grandmothers, whatever else. You're gonna go and fight them.
you're gonna
And
default
does it
to
mean you love Hitler? No, but war is full of hard choices.
yeah. And so I mean, one of two things is gonna happen. It's they're gonna have to, keep the gloves on and be delicate with this. And then
Mhm.
we're all gonna be surprised in 10 more years when the next bad thing happens.
Yep.
Or you can go in and do a Dresden, do a Hiroshima, do a Nagasaki, and it's
Mhm.
bad, and you'll have people talking about how bad it is forever. But none of us ever bring up how great is it that, we have air bases in Germany and Okinawa, and they're our allies, and we've never once worried about war with them again. We we
Mhm.
we take the trophy for granted. We don't talk about. We like to talk about all the bad things we did. We don't talk about how it's not a debate to go. It wouldn't have led to peace. We're living in the peace.
Mhm.
Germany and Japan, they're our
Yeah.
allies. There
Israel's
is no
in,
debate.
Israel's in a very difficult position because, the United States coming out of World War II is the foremost world power, one of only two left. And Israel is this tiny little state that everybody already hates. And so if they go act too strongly in Gaza, they could end up with a widening conflict because of that. And so they're in an extremely difficult position. I wouldn't want to be Benjamin Netanyahu at this point. And then, of course, he's got to face questions eventually about why it happened and why where was the IDF when the Hamas paragliders started coming across the border and killing the people at the music festival. But that's a whole other question. The thing is, Israel is so isolated on the world stage already. It's very difficult for it to act in that kind of manner that would be comparable to those things from World War II. The world has changed, and Israel is not the U.S., and their hands are already tied before anything has happened.
There is something that it's on one hand, it's like a funny like meme statement, but there is also a point of me that starts to scratch my head. It truly it's began as like a LOL, but the more I'm looking at it is there's just a guy from the Waffen SS in the Canadian Parliament.
Yeah.
We're funding the Azov Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
We're tweeting immediately after from like the Palestinian, Biden administration account that we should do no retaliation. We're going over there and we're giving 100 million to Gaza. Strip political. I always, don't look at it. It's like in like I don't know, like the shitty nightly shows. They'd go out in like '08 and they'd find a Republican and be like, "What do you think about McCain's tax plan or whatever?" And they'd be like, "I like it." And they'd be like, "That's Obama's," and they'd be like, they'd look embarrassed. And then you find like the kid on the college campus where like, "What do you think about Obama's defense policy?" And they're like, "That's rational." And they're like, "That's McCain's," and people get all flustered. So just remove everything. Just put an erase. Do what they should have done with that Delta Force picture. Blur everyone out. Truly remove yourself. Look at this problem as if it's a critical thinking problem on an exam. At what point do you go, yeah, those are Nazis? I mean, seriously though, at what point? Waffen SS, we're funding the Azov Battalion. I think we just the most recent bill is $100 billion to people with a swastika, and we're telling Israel to cool their jets while giving money to Gaza. Remove faces, dates, everything. Look at that. And if you said, to the best of your knowledge, it's Jeopardy, just put your best foot forward. If there are Nazis in the room, could you point to them?
Yeah, and it would be Joe and his henchmen.
Is that, I mean, but at a certain point, if you're Israel, do you have to start looking at that?
Yeah. Well, he's like I say, Netanyahu's in an extremely difficult position, and this is another aspect of it. That essentially the only ally Israel has, or one of the few, is the United States, and yet the United States is ruled by this senile idiot who hates them. And the senile idiot who hates them, he can't say that outright. He can just show it in his actions, as he did when he went over and gave the 100 million to Gaza and told Israel not to give in to rage and so on and so on, putting them on notice that they'll be watching. They have to not be enraged too much. They have to have a very calm and cool reaction to this in Gaza. And they'll be facing people who are funded by the same guy, by their ostensible friends. And so what does he do? He can't denounce the guy to his face because then he's got nobody and no help at all. And there are a lot of people in the United States, including in the government, who are sympathetic to Israel. So he's got to he's just going to just roll with it. But it's an absurd situation.
And now we're in the last 5 minutes stepping out into pure speculation. I speak for myself. That's how you know it's always about to get spicy when I'm like, and by the way, I'm speaking for myself and not you always see the guests like, oh fuck. But I remember I interviewed Barry Levine, author of The Spider, about Jeffrey Epstein and talking about, was that a Mossad operation because, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was in the Mossad or was a handler or was handled by them and mysteriously died off of a yacht run by them, whatever. Or like, just let's like playing with this idea. If you're Israel and every day is an existential threat and you have one ally, it's the United States, are you going to go on just good faith that they're never going to turn on you? Or do you think you're going to start blackmailing them and going, at all costs, they will never not give us military aid? Do you start blackmailing senators on an island to make sure that this shit never happens? And then, as the comedian Tim Dillon said a couple days ago, when Epstein got caught, everything fell apart. Is there truth to that? Was that a blackmail operation and it fell apart? And now, I don't know, maybe our hands aren't tied. Maybe they've destroyed all the tapes with the senators. Again,
Wow.
blur the faces, critical thinking test. It's all
I,
coming apart.
I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. And it would explain or be yet another reason why the Epstein client list and all that has never been made public. I don't know. Like you say, that's all speculation. I
Sure.
don't know.
I think, back to what we were saying beforehand. I was telling Dr. President Spencer how, my parents have been retired for a couple of years now and they look a decade younger because they just work outside with their hands and you go up there and they don't watch the news. They'll turn it on for a minute and then just turn it off and it's silent. Just see like a moose out in the distance and it's just peaceful. And that's how they go about life is, what's the secret? I would say it's working outside, but I'd also say it's they don't digest it all. I would say that's maybe what Netanyahu needs to do. How do you make your situation easier? Turn off the fucking news. What's in your line of sight? Your country, your people. Fuck everyone else. They're gonna hate you no matter what. The same reason when I got banned from YouTube, I never tried to fight back. I've bend the knee once, and then in a year, they're gonna move the goalposts again. They hate you already. Act like it.
Golda Meir said she would rather. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, "If it's a choice between being dead and respected or being alive and hated, I'll go with being alive and hated."
Yeah, it's the whole like you got to understand your the laws in your state and when you can shoot and when you can't shoot. My logic is always like, no, it's what's the line? I'd rather be judged by 6 than carried by 12, or judged by 12 than carried. I'd rather argue my point in front of a jury than my body be dead and then been like, legally he was allowed to shoot back. Like, no, doesn't matter. Use your rational mind. Blur out the faces. Critical thinking test. Just work from there. So, also, lastly, for anyone interested, they should look up the Samson option. It's obviously there's can't be confirmed, but it's this idea that's been floating around for like 50 years that if Israel's ever abandoned and no one comes to their aid, they're just going to start setting off nukes in the region, and that will tie in all the world powers. So it's in the world's interest to not let them fall by the wayside. Because in Samson, he pulled down the pillars and then the temple collapses. Just says, if I can't have it, no one can. I don't know, man. But yeah, guys, please go in the description. Please go follow Mr. Spencer on Twitter. Please go to his website. You can follow all good things Jihad Watch. And again, I'm banned from Twitter, so I don't know what's going on there anymore. But again, case in point, fuck them. Do your own thing. Take care of yourself. That's what I got. So Mr. Spencer, thank you so much for your time, man. I hope you feel better, and
thank you very much.
And I hope you retire soon.
Me too.
All right, brother. Till next time, guys. Thank you so much for watching, Mr. Spencer. Take